Hey everyone, welcome back to another video in my series of restoration videos for my 1978 Volkswagen Bus. In this one, I'll be showing you how I restored both the luggage rack and the pop top. So stay tuned to see how I did it. Okay, so I've got my pop top outside of my workshop here, and I've got it on a couple sawhorses, and thus far all I've done is just pressure wash it and got it clean. Now what I'm doing is I'm doing some light sanding. And so what I've done here is I set up my little hand block with some 320 grit paper. It's just pretty smooth paper here. And all I'm trying to do is kind of knock some of the dirt off here. And so really I'm just taking a hand sander and just doing a little bit of light sanding right there. And you can kind of see the change in color that it's making. And that's all I'm looking for. Just a few strokes of sanding just to get the dirt off and get it clean and smooth. And then once I've sanded all that, I'll go ahead and wipe it all down and prep it for primer. Okay, well I had to move operations indoors because the weather's not going to cooperate for the next few days. But I got that one coat of primer on. I will say that this primer is quite thick and it really goes fast. I used probably 80% of that can and I stopped there, got that one coat done. I'm probably not going to do a second coat. I'm just going to sand it at 320. And it actually says on the can to sand it at 320 between coats. And I can see why, because it goes on, especially with that roller brush, man, it goes on real rough. It kind of pulls. And so, yeah, it's rougher than when I started. So I'll definitely need to sand it. You can even see how it's kind of textured after I painted that. I'm going to get the 320 out and just kind of go over it real quick. It should knock off and get smooth again. All right, so the next step is to apply the gel coat. I've got everything prepped here, sanded to 320. I used a little bit of automotive primer to fill in some gashes and stuff like that and sanded that back down. Everything's smooth, everything's clean and wiped down, so we're ready for that top coat. Well, I don't know much about this gel coat. I don't have any experience with it, and it's obviously mostly for boats. But I'll have a link to a video. I can't remember the name of the channel now, but he does a really good job of explaining the gel coat and the many uses and ways to use it. So for example, like he explains what the wax versus no wax and how to use the catalyst, how much catalyst to put in, how to roll it and brush it on to get the different finishes. He talks about color tinting this stuff, even mixing this with another substrate, I can't remember what it was, to make it into a paste where you could use it as a filler, which is really cool. I never knew you could do that too. So there's all sorts of cool uses for it. One thing to keep in mind though, when I was looking at the can and looking at the instructions, it talks about mixing it and then just basically applying it. Doesn't talk about coats or flash time or anything, and that's because you can't really think of this as paint because it's more of just a coating, almost like my epoxy when I did this epoxy floor. It's more like that in that you're just going to apply this one coat, right? Now there are ways to do it where multi-coats with the no wax versus the wax, but the wax one is the one you want for the final top coat. And this can be applied, I think, up to 24 mils of thickness, but it's a one and done thing. There's just gonna be one coat. So my goal is to coat this and the luggage rack with as much of these 2 quarts. I've got two quarts of this stuff. So I think what I'm gonna do is pour half of this into my mixing thing and put, I think the instructions call for 2 tablespoons per pint. So I'll mix a pint at a time with 2 tablespoons of the catalyst and go with that and see how far I can go. Like I said, my hope is that I can do no more than this whole quart plus maybe 8 ounces or maybe up to a pint of this one, and that will leave me enough to do the luggage rack and put it on as thick as I can. Okay, so I am back after letting this gel coat set up for a week, not because it required it, but I just happened to be going on vacation, so I was out of town for a week. First thing I do when I apply some sort of coating is give it the fingernail scratch test, and just to make sure it's chemically and mechanically bonded properly, and certainly has. Stuff as hard as rock. It's like I dipped it in plastic or something. Now cosmetically though is where the problem is. It's streaky, it's just very ununiform, very streaky in terms of color coverage, in terms of the texture. It just looks unfinished, and well, it looks like crap. You know, this is my first foray into doing gel coat. I'm sure it's me. I could have probably applied it better, but I felt like I applied it with the roller and brush as thick as I could. I put an entire quart on, and you know, I don't know. That's as best as I could do. So cosmetically, I'm not happy with it, and I have two options now. I can either re-prep it by kind of, you know, and I've started doing that, sanding it back to about 300, or that's 320 sandpaper. I've also got a little bit of 400 grit. So sanding it back down, not taking it all off, but just kind of smoothing it back out and trying to get it back to a consistency by sanding it. I could either go over it again with gel coat. I've still got this one other quart. Or I can paint it, and I think I'm moving toward painting rather than attempting another gel coat coverage. The reason is because I don't trust that I can roll it on and tip it and get it into, you know, the consistency I want to. I think it's still going to be streaky and inconsistent when I do it again. But also, the color is just going to look weird. I mean, I've got this white Volkswagen color. It's actually gray, called gray white, R902, which is the Tamco single stage that I used on the body of the car. And from what I could look up on the internet, it is common and possible to shoot a single stage urethane paint over gel coat, again, provided it's been prepped properly, sanded to 400 grit, cleaned real well, and then shot. But the reason I'm leaning toward this rather than some other coating, whether it's another white topside marine urethane paint or anything else, is because I think because most of the car is white, that off-white, gray-white Volkswagen color, I think having a color match top would look better than just another off-white color. So that's kind of why I'm thinking about going with that. Now onto the luggage rack. As you can see, I started the process. I'm on the first step of everything. I, you know, pressure washed, degreased, and a little bit of bleach, and got this thing as clean as I could. Now I'm in the process of the 320 grit, just sanding by hand. Again, this is what I did on the main piece, and you can see that area's been sanded, that area hasn't, and it's really more of just a cleaning step. It's just resurfacing and just cleaning up this nasty fiberglass. So the prep work is going to be all the same. The only change I might have is because there's a lot of like fine surface cracks, none of them go through on top and bottom, but I am going to do all the same work there, but I might actually gel coat some of the bottom as well, just because I have enough of that gel coat, and I just want to make sure it's sealed really well, and those surface cracks that I didn't have on the main pop top are all sealed in very well. I really considered changing my process because of what a pain it was to do all the gel coat, primer, and paint, all the prep steps all in between there. I literally could save a lot of time by just prepping it, finishing prepping the way I'm doing it right now, shooting it with my epoxy primer, because epoxy primer is just fine with going right over bare fiberglass, and then immediately shooting it with paint. Because another thing that's nice about epoxy primer is in many cases you can just let the last coat of primer flash and go right over it with paint, with a urethane paint. And that saves you from having to re-prep and you know, reshoot the paint. You can do it basically all in one step. But I'm going to go with the original process because that gel coat is more than just a paint, it's a resurfacer, and I want everything to wear the same, even though it's basically 6 steps to do all of it, which is such a pain because you have to do the prep work, that's the first step. then the primer, that's second, then the sanding and prepping for the gel coat, that's 3, then the gel coat, that's 4, then sanding and prepping the gel coat, that's 5, and then finally painting it with the urethane paint, that's 6. And by the way, I realized I didn't take a clip after I had finished painting the pop top. I never showed the results, so you'll have to see that in the final reveal, but I will say the result was great. It's passed the fingernail test, it looks great and consistent, and so the painting is the way to go over the gel coat, provided that you properly prep everything. So I'm going to do all the same stuff here. Hopefully it'll go a lot quicker because this is a lot smaller of a piece. I can flip it over and take it in and outside by myself without needing help, and it's a third of the area. I'm just going to move forward with getting this done the same way, so I'll bring you in when that's all done. Okay, well, I'm just about finished with the luggage rack, and of course it had all the same process that I did on the pop top, which is the primer, the gel coat, and then paint, and of course sanding and prep all between. You can see even the brush strokes. I did nothing but brushing on this, so you can see the brush strokes in there, but that's fine. I don't really care. It's smooth enough. On the little tie-down clips, these are the original steel ones. I had to drill all the rivets out and remove them, and I sandblasted them, sanded them, and repainted them. You can buy new ones. They're $4 a piece, and you have to buy 8 of them, so that kind of adds up. So I just went ahead and put the extra effort in to refurbish those. I also got a new trim seal. This is from Worksburg, and it is a luggage rack camper edge trim. It's without the bulb seal. So on the main pop top seal, notice that you have both trim and a bulb seal. That seals it in from water, but you don't want that with the luggage rack because the weep holes allow water to drain right through the luggage rack and then down the roof. And again, all 3 of these seals came from this company Worksburg, which you can get on either the Samba or eBay. There's their information. We have the flat rubber seal that goes on the front edge of the pop top. We have the main pop top trim edge seal, and of course the trim edge for the luggage rack. Now I'll show you one customization that I made, which is kind of interesting, is I bought a vinyl decal, and it is in kind of the similar font as the Westfalia one, but you can get it customized, and I'll give a link to the eBay store that sold that. What I did was I applied the graphic. I decided to center it along the front here, and then and I actually have 2 of them. I'll be putting one on the back of the pop top as well. I centered it along the front, so the screws will go through this, but the screw will be black. And what I did was, to seal it in, I masked it off and then sprayed some clear coat over it. You can see the edge of the clear coat right here, but what I'll do is take 1000 grit and just wet sand and kind of fade it on either end, and you won't really see it. So I'm in the process of installing these brackets, and then I found a major problem, and that is the truss head screws that would originally have gone in there would have been M5 truss head screws. I have no idea how to find those or where to find those. So here's what I'm going to do to modify them. So obviously I cleaned up and painted these brackets, and then now I'm adding these riv nuts into them. And this is a common thing to do. A friend of mine did M6 riv nuts, and he found some M6 screws to go in them. I can't find any M6 screws other than going on Amazon and ordering them in a large, quantity of 25. Locally, what I could find was these stainless steel, let's see if I can pick one up, these stainless steel 1/4 inch truss head screws. And I can find these all day long at auto parts stores or at Ace Hardware because they're 1/4 inch, and they're typically, you can use these for license plates and stuff like that, and they're stainless steel. I'm painting the heads black right now. It is hacky to mix metric and SAE, but again, I wanted to find something that I can find locally, and I just cannot find M6 or M5 truss head screws that in stainless like that. They're just not readily available. So I'm going to go ahead and finish the rest of these brackets. Now when I go to put them back on, when I go to screw them in, I will be putting a bead of some sealant, RTV sealant, all around the heads there so that when they're attached to the car, this will be sealed really well from water. Okay, well here's the final reveal. I'm excited to show you the finished product here. There is the luggage rack. You've pretty much seen it finished, but there it is on the car installed. And there is the pop top, all looking the same. Just put the graphic on, so I'll have to wait for that to cure to wet sand that. And here's a shot of the top of it. Now I'm going to go inside and pop it up and I'll show you that. There it is opened. I didn't do much of any restoration on the inside other than cleaning it, although it doesn't look like it. Maybe later I'll just kind of lay a tarp down and just kind of clean and just kind of paint that white again. I did take all the remnant tenting off and all the nasty stuff. I cleaned up the hardware a little bit. I wasn't going to do anything with these back hinges, but I ended up taking them off completely without upsetting any of the bolts that I painted up at the top, the carriage bolts. But I did go ahead and take those off, and I did clean them up really well, degreased them, sanded them, painted them, and then re-greased them and put them back on. So I think that was definitely a good call. But as you can see, the rest of it's just kind of an off yellow, kind of gross color. But like I said, I can clean that up later. I'm super happy because it fits really nice back on there and operates just fine. I went ahead and put the aluminum tent, I don't know what you call this, the aluminum tent like tie down strap all the way around just so I could fill in, because there's a lot of holes and I just want to make sure all the holes on the top are filled in with those screws. So even though I'm not going to put a tent in there, I went ahead and just put that aluminum trim on. And what else did I do? I guess I don't know if I did this right because I didn't really have the car beforehand, but I went ahead and attached this bracket. I painted that the body color too with the rest of the stuff. And I managed to find some M5 bolts for that. I guess that's the right thing. I don't know. And yeah, that's all tied down. So I did find my original bumpers as well. Well, I think that wraps up the video. If you have any questions or comments on my process or what I did, please feel free to leave them in the comments section, and I'll see you on the next video.